Hello, I'd like to introduce Symbol Palette Control, an interactive panel which allows you to have multiple color palettes per character. Just to start this demonstration, I will show you how we can switch by the press of a button from the daytime orange and white palette of our Kinefox to a nighttime palette. Press this button here and then I'll choose swap. And there we go. And it's not only this version of the character, but every single pose in our character file got colored in blue. So how does this work? We obviously have a color palette here, and then we have corresponding colors. So each one of these in the master corresponds to a color in the nighttime palette. And then when you press the swap color palettes button, these were found and replaced. I'll do it again, just so that we can see how efficiently it works. And now I will walk you through all the options and through a few different scenarios what you can do with Symbol Palette Control. Okay, for the first introduction of the panels tools, I will use this animation, which some of you might have already seen from our version 5 teaser. It's just this robotic cat jumping in the air and flying off screen. So the structure of this is such so that everything is inside this container. All the symbols and all the layers are nested within this container, which I will now select in the library. Before we do anything with this, of course, we need to show our panel. So let me show you in CC. It's in Window Extensions Symbol Palette Control, and it's just a little different in CS. It's in Window, Other Panels, Symbol Palette Control. The panel looks and behaves exactly the same. Now the name suggests that it actually works with symbol selections in the library. All the palette information is written into the symbol items in the library. So to generate a palette, we need to have a library selection. And in this case, this RoboCat symbol contains in itself all the elements that make the animation, or it could be a background or a prop. Now once we have the selected element in the library, I will press this button, generate or load palette set, and it will analyze the symbol and load all the colors that are present as swatches. Here it displays the name of the symbol container. In brackets we can see the number of colors. The original palette is always called master, and in brackets we can see which is the current palette. At the moment we only have one, but soon enough we'll have more than one palette for our robotic cat. Now once the colors are loaded, the metadata is written into the symbol, and if we save the file, the next time we load it, we can press this button and it will offer us to load an existing palette set. Now if I click on a color, I will select it, and when a color is selected, the little magnifying glass here activates. So I can press on it and we can see information in what symbols the red color appears and also its value. If I click on the black, I can see that it only appears in the shadow symbol. There's one more thing that we can do. We can identify colors by picking them on the stage and seeing where they appear in the palette. So I'll color pick this blue color here, and go pick, and then we'll see it's this blue color in the palette. I can try with this one, and it's this dark gray color. So we can identify in both directions. We can color pick on the stage to identify the swatch that a specific color is associated with, or we can choose a color in the palette and get information where it has been used within the character symbol structure. Now the next thing that we can do is we can organize our colors in groups. So I'll add a new group here, and then I will drag a few colors to a separate group. I'll just drag the non-grays and the black. This is just an empty swatch which I'll delete by dragging over to the bin. Now the other thing that I can do is I can rename the groups by shift clicking on their name. I'll call this A and I'll call this B. Once the groups are named, I can create a clone of our palette. I'll press this button here, copy. I'll call the new palette test. And there it is. It's very important to understand that colors in the clones always match a corresponding color in the master palette. So if I move this color, if I drag it here, you will see how the corresponding white moved as well. If I move this one here, you can see the corresponding red color moved as well. When you have a clone, you can apply color effects to the whole palette by pressing this button. So if we look at this dialog, it matches exactly the color effects dialog in Flash. Just for the sake of this demo, I will reduce the blue to 30 and the red to 30, and I'll hit apply. You could see how the whole color palette shifted toward green. Now I'll delete this and duplicate again. I'll keep calling it test and show you something else. I'll select this and apply a tint to it. I will adjust the tint to my liking. Say this is how I want it, and then I will leave it selected on the stage, and I will open the color effects dialog again. Now pay attention to this button, load color effects from selected instance. Now if I press load, the dialog reads the settings from the tint and loads them here. And also I can choose whether to apply the color effects to both of my groups or isolate one. Let's decide to isolate B and only apply to the gray color. So if I say apply, you can see these got tinted and these weren't changed at all. I can do a second pass. I can choose a different tint color, something like this, and this time go load and exclude the first group. I'll exclude these from the tinting and apply to B only. So we have two different kinds of tinting applied to the same palette by isolating certain colors in different groups. Now, let's say I wouldn't want to lose the contrast in the black, because the black is the only color that's been used in the shadow. I'll shift click on this and we'll get just an edit of an individual color. I'll go back and choose black. I will isolate the white as well. I'll go OK. Keep white white. We can check where the white was used in a few symbols, and for sure I know that it's been used for the flames. And now when this is done, I can test my palette and see what's actually happened. So there we go, swap, and this is the result. And if I hit play, we can see that the whole animation has been recolored with our new palette. Now let me show you how you can save the palette. So I'll choose export set, and I can go robo cat and save it as a file. Now let's remember that when we saved our palette, the test was the current one. Now let me revert this file. I've reverted it to a state where we did not have any palette saved. So if I clear the panel, we can only see the default colors. Now if I'd like to replace this with the one that we already saved, I'll go import set, I'll choose my saved palette and say open. There's an existing color palette already generated. Whether I'd like to override it, I'll say OK. And now we have the two color palettes, but there's a mismatch because we saved it when this was the current palette. If I now press swap, it will allow us to swap from test to master, while the current situation is just a mismatch because I reverted my file. So I'll have to go cancel and manually tell it that the master is the active palette. We do so by choosing set current palette, and I'll say OK. I would like to set it to master. Now when master is set to current, I can swap the colors again. Let me just do one more pass. Let's copy test and call it test 2. I'll collapse these two, and I wasn't particularly happy with these two colors. I didn't mind the orange, but let's decide and keep these just blue. So I'll go here and shift click and color pick this, and I'll zoom out and color pick the other one. I'll just cross pick them. I'll color pick the other one from my original palette, just like this. So now we will have a third variant for our character. Let me do the color swap. Choose swap palettes. Instead of test this time, we'll go to test 2 and I'll press swap. Here we go. Now this is a nicer variant than the first original one because, say, I like this design better. If we hit enter, we can see that the whole animation has been recolored. I can rename this palette and call it warmer. I'm happy with it. And then I will delete this one, which was intermediate and I just didn't like. And then I'll just save my file. I'll clear the panel just to demonstrate this, and I'll close the file and I'll just reopen it. Now when we reopen the file, we can load the existing palette. If we had multiple characters with multiple palettes, this dialog would have list of all of them. So I'll just choose this one and say load, and this time all is fine. The warmer palette is the current one and the master is collapsed. Now I'd like to experiment with the flame color just for the fun of it. It's the white, I know it's the white with a little tint. So I'll duplicate the warmer and just call it test again. Go OK, and I'll change this one color only. I'll go for a bright yellow. Go OK. And now I will swap the palettes. Oh, my mistake. Should have chosen test instead of default. Okay. Now, and there we go. We got the yellowish tint in the white area of the flames. Whether it's better or not, it's another question. But this is how we can do these things. Let me show you just one more thing with this character before I move on to another example and another usage scenario. If we look at the master palette here, you can see these check marks. These allow us to exclude certain colors from swapping. So this time I will exclude the second group and only swap the first group, and I will go from master to test. Let's go master, let's choose test, and there you go. Now all the grays were swapped, but the blue, red and the flame color were left intact. By organizing your colors in groups, you can have very precise control over the results of swapping between palettes. In this next example, I'll show you some extra ways of doing things that we've already covered in the previous example. To start with, I'll open the library and create a deep copy of our symbol container using duplicate symbol recursive. What duplicate symbol recursive does is that it copies not only the symbol itself, but all the nested symbols inside it. So this one, this clone of our cat, is actually a completely independent character. Now I will use this as a reference point. I've saved the little color effect here, which I will apply to my clone, and then I will use this as a starting point of a new palette for this character. As you remember, we need to have a symbol selection to generate initially the palette. So I'll select my original cat and press the generate palette button, and then after that I will not need the library anymore. As you can see, there's 47 colors in this palette. I've used quite many colors when designing the character. Anyway, I'll duplicate the palette, call it night, and then I will select this other version of the character and apply the color effect. So I'll load the color effect from the selected symbol on the stage and apply it to the colors in the nighttime palette. Now I can remove the color effect from it, and then the next thing I want to do is I would like to isolate the eyes in a separate group. So I'll create a group, let's call it group 2, and I need to identify the colors within the eyes, and I would like to isolate them from the transformation. So I'll zoom in and use the color picker to identify all the colors used in the eyes. So what I did, because I knew that I wanted to isolate the eye whites and the clothes, I made sure that these are two separate colors. So this one is just the pure white and this is just slightly different. So I'll color pick this one here just to identify which one it is in the palette, and it's this color. So I'll just drag it to separate it in the separate group. And I'll continue doing this with this black color, which is not black. It's this color here. I'll drag it to the separate group, and I'm quite sure that these two are the yellow colors. I can either search with the magnifying glass tool. Yes, it says it's the iris, or I can color pick, but yeah, this one says iris as well. So I'll just move it here and I'll delete the empty swatch. So now when the colors of the eyes are separated from the other colors, I can exclude this group from the color swapping, and I can go swap to night, and I'll just press swap, and there we go. We excluded the eyes and we got this result. Now if I'd like to, I can work separately on the eyes and I can work separately on individual elements. But this was just a demonstration how very quickly we can identify a bunch of colors and then exclude them from the transformation. Now I'll just go back and show you one more thing with this particular character. Let's identify the sword and generate a palette for it. So if I generate a palette for the sword, this is what we get. Now I can copy this and I can apply some effect to the sword. So let's just add 20% blue and 20% green to these colors and go apply. We get a slightly cooler, greener looking array of gray colors. So if I swap this time, of course it's logical, it will be only the sword which will change color. So this time we'll only see a prop change color. I'll go swap, and there you go. The sword changed to a slightly cooler color. I can go back to the original sword color, and just wanted to show you, if I clear the panel and click load, we'll get the dialog which will allow us to choose between the container or the sword. If I go for the container, we'll get our daytime and nighttime palettes. The final thing that I would like to show you is how you can optimize a palette. In this case, this is our original Kinefox character, which I designed without paying too much attention how many close colors I have used, and you can see there's 35 altogether, and some of those oranges are quite similar. So I'll try to just reduce the number of similar orange colors somehow, and maybe some of those similar dark colors as well. How do I do this? Well, first of all, I'll just create groups for all the colors that look very similar to one another, and I'll try to just place them near one another. So the algorithm tries to sort them by similarity, but of course you can sometimes do much better than the automated algorithm. Now let's just drag some of these darker colors to a separate group. Let's say these are quite similar. I'm not sure about these two, but let's focus on some of the oranges. So how about this one? Okay, so let's say these three are very similar. So the first one, the second one, and the third one. And I'll just unify these two gray colors as well. So I'll just create another group and I'll drag these two, and I'm sure that this will be enough for our demonstration. Now we can delete not only by dragging over the bucket, but by selecting a color and then using the bucket as a button. Okay, so I would like to make these three colors the same color, these three colors the same color, and these two colors the same color. Once I've isolated them in groups, I will duplicate the palette, and then I'll do some research into which of these colors is the most popular one. So I'll search for this one. It has been used in only one symbol. This one has been used in one symbol as well, and this one has been used in one symbol also. So brows and muzzle. Okay, either. And what about these? Now one symbol only, two symbols here, and one symbol here. So let's say we would like to keep this one that has been used in two symbols. I'll put it first in the group. And let's check these. 1 and 1. So it doesn't really matter. I have no preference over any of these. So here is how we unify group. You can see the little tooltip here. When you keep your mouse over a group name, it says Control-click to unify colors. So what unification of colors does is that when you Control-click on a group name, it basically makes all the colors in the group just like the first color. So now these three, if we hover over these, you can see they're all the same here. Just look down here. They're all different colors, and here they're all the same, just like the first one. So I'll Control-click on this group's name and unify these three. Now again they are all the same, and I will unify these two. We had 35 colors in our palette. We've unified some of those colors. Now I'll swap the master with the copy, which has a reduced number of colors. So I'll just swap the palette, and once this is the current palette, I will delete the set. I'll delete the set. Remember, 35 colors in this set, and I will generate it again, and now we only have 30 colors in the set. We have to be very careful when we reduce colors, but this is how it works. If you would like to optimize your color palettes, you can do a couple of passes. You can hunt down the colors that are the least used ones and reduce your palette for whatever reason you might want to do this. I think with this, I've covered everything about the symbol palette control panel. Enjoy using it, and I hope that this video has been helpful. Thanks for watching.